Go ahead and call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of April 12th, 2023. Before we get started, I would need a motion to nominate a chair pro tem for the evening.
I move to nominate Jim Heidner as the chair pro tem this evening.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call, Commissioner Cotton,
Here.
Commissioner Mulcrone.
Are we saying we're here or we're voting here?
We're voting for the chair.
Yes, I'm sorry.
I probably did that in reverse, but we'll move on anyway. Sorry.
Yes.
Yes. Commissioner Lees,
Yes.
Commissioner Nabbit,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
and Commissioner Heidner.
Yes. Okay, we've had.
With
we'll
that, I
now
will,
have a roll
I will go
call.
through the roll call. All right, Commissioner Cotton,
Here.
Commissioner Mulcrone,
Here.
Commissioner Lees,
Here.
Commissioner Nabbit,
Here.
Commissioner Smith,
Here.
Commissioner Morris has just notified us that he's unable to attend, and Chairman Pro Tem Heidner.
Here.
All right.
Okay, the first items was general public comments. Is that regarding the cases?
General public comment would be, public comment would be somebody who's in attendance making a comment on something other than an agenda item.
Okay. Being there's no one else here besides the petitioner, I assume that there aren't and no general comments, and we'll move on. The first case tonight is 2023-01, a petition filed by HPIV Chicago LLC, which is the property owner at the property known as 830 West End Court in Vernon Hills. And they're seeking variation of the zoning code for parking requirements.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Bernard Citron of the law firm of Thompson Coburn. I'm representing the applicant today. With me to my right is Tom Beckus, who is one of the principals in Hemis, which is the actual owner of the property. And he has been responsible for this building since Hemis bought it, which is now...
February 15th.
So we've only owned it since the 15th, but we're pretty well aware of this building. But thank you.
Before we get started, would you mind signing in on the speaker? Signing?
I will. I have to get a real pen. This
Okay.
is a stylus. I'm sorry.
And then we will need to swear you
Yes.
in before we
Okay,
get started.
what's...
If you raise your right hand, do you so solemnly swear or affirm as the case may be that what you testified today is the truth?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
Thank you. This is an interesting situation, and I'm sure this has occurred other times within the village. In fact, I was aware of this property way, way back in time, in I guess, my youth, when I was a lot younger. This building was originally built as a general office building. And the parking requirements in those days, as is today, the parking requirements for, quote, general office, and that, is like accounting agencies, insurance brokers, people like that, are less than what is required for medical offices. So the building was conforming in terms of parking when it was first built. But through time, and I will tell you, I think you're going to be seeing more and more of this, these type of office buildings in the suburbs have mainly become medical office. It's just the nature of the business. It's the nature of the market these days. So this building, well before they and Tom's company bought this building became all medical office. Now, Tom will testify that the building is 100% full, and that's an important thing to keep in mind when we talk about how many parking spaces are on the site and how many parking spaces we really need. But the building is entirely occupied. It's entirely occupied with medical uses, and here we are today. Now, I do need to make a correction because Mr. Jennings sent someone out there, and we didn't realize this. We had a site plan of this property, which we turned into staff as part of our application, which if you count the number of parking spaces on the site plan, it showed 108 parking spaces, including 8 ADA accessible spaces. And I will say that 8 is not the required number. If you look at the Illinois accessibility code, it's 5 spaces are required, but again, considering the use of this property, it was determined that we would just leave that with the 8 accessible spaces, ADA spaces. But when Mr. Jennings informed us that, no, there was only 106 spaces, he's right. We sent our own guy out there last night, and he counted all the spaces. So there's 106 parking spaces. So the variation we're seeking is from what would have been the required number of spaces to 106 spaces, because that's what's on the site. Not that this is necessarily part of,
I could stop you for a second. The 106 does not include the handicap?
it includes the handicap.
It includes-
It does include the handicap. But, and I'm emphasizing the fact of the handicap because it requires 5 handicap spaces, but if you look at the Illinois Accessibility Code, the number of handicap spaces is not based on what's on the site, it's actually based on what's required. So if we were only counting the 106, we'd actually even need less parking spaces, but so be it, we have 8, that's what's going to remain on this property. One item that was pointed out is there are some improvements that need to be made to this property. We recognize that. I did send an email to Mr. Jennings indicating that we are going to resurface the parking lot, we are going to power wash it, we're going to go fix up the landscaping. Again, we've only owned it since February.
8 weeks.
8 weeks, so it is part of our process to do this, because we do try to take care of our property. So with that, I'd like to ask Mr. Beckus a couple of questions, and then, of course, we'll all be available for questions by the commission. Tom, could you please state your name?
Sure, it's Tom Beckus.
And Tom, what position do you have with the applicant?
I'm the property manager for Hamas at the property.
Okay, and you've indicated already that this was purchased at roughly about February 15th?
I think February 15th or the 16th is when we officially took it over.
And when you took it over, the building was already entirely occupied, 100%, no vacancies?
Correct, 100%.
And when you purchased this property, you guys looked at what the rent roll was, you looked at the leases and whatever. Was this basically the tenancy in this building for as far as you can go back, was
Yes,
medical offices?
These leases have been in place for years. And they're some are at the beginning, well, I think they're, wouldn't say at the beginning, but middle. Some are nearing the end of their lease, but they've been 5, 10, 15-year leases.
At least from your observation, you've been to the property a number of times?
Yeah, I've been there 20 times in the last 8 weeks.
And I know this is a self-serving question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. I think people know where I'm going with this one. But we have other witnesses who can also attest to the same thing. Has there ever been a situation where you've driven by where the parking lot was even close to being full?
Yeah, no, there's always space available in the lot, the way it's situated right now. And I was going to say, as a matter of fact, we do tenant surveys before we buy properties and ask if there's any problems, anything we should look at when it comes to buying a property, and parking is one of them, and nobody indicated there was any kind of a problem at all.
Just for the record, by the way, even when we did the committee of the whole application, or committee of the whole presentation on this, some of the trustees even said they've never seen this parking lot full. So we'll let them decide that when this variation gets up to them. I think that's it, Tom.
Okay.
So from a standard standpoint, I think we meet the standards for a variation. This property has existed this way prior to us buying it. The conditions occurred over a period of time. Someone issued permits to allow these uses to be in this building, and we're taking the building in its current condition. Our hardship is not physically based, other than the fact that if we could add more parking on site, we would do so, but we can't. We're maxed out. You look at the site plan, we're maxed out as to what parking would be there, and it would be an extreme hardship to us to have to start emptying tenants. Because again, if you look at where the market is today for these type of office buildings, there just isn't. I mean, what we're seeing is a lot of dentists, we're seeing a lot of orthodontists, we're seeing a lot of medical, type uses. Even if you go to retail centers these days, you see what we call medical retail. The Athleticos or similar uses are popping up everywhere. So you just don't have the same type of office uses that we have. And our goal is to make this property better, not worse. So we need to keep this property leased up in order to do this. So that's basically our case, is if anything else, and I wanted Tom to indicate how long these tenants have been there, even pre-COVID, because I know that can stick in people's mind as, well, wait a minute, of course there was no one, there was no parking problem because people weren't going, they weren't going to the dentist, right? When it was COVID, they weren't going to the dentist. But these same tenants have been here a long time, and there's no evidence that there's ever been an issue with the number of parking spaces on this site. So that basically is our case. There's one item I would like to address. I think it's appropriate. Well, I'll stop. Let me stop for a minute here and see if there's any questions that any of the commissioners have.
I
You can just ask. I don't call on you, but
have a question, please.
yeah.
So in this, I pass here 20 times a day. I mean, I live right there. I never really see the parking lot full. Is there orthodontics in there? Is
Yeah,
there
there's two
Graber?
dentists, there's two dentists there.
There's
right
two
now.
dentists.
Yeah, so technically then, I think it seems to me that all the businesses here have different times where they would be busy. Because orthodontics is generally like after school, it's like.
Yeah, they'll do Saturday mornings, and they spread out their appointments. There's no big rush that comes in at noon, like for a lunch hour or at
No,
4 or
right,
5, right?
right.
So that each suite has, their appointments spread out, so they're continually getting people through, but it's never, overburdensome.
And they're long-term tenants, like how long do they have a lease for? Is it like a 10 and 10 or 5?
They all
and 5?
vary, but they're generally 10, 15 years.
Yeah,
You know,
Okay.
with options to renew on
okay,
top of that.
thank you.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jerry.
If a tenant moved out and another tenant that was more parking intensive moved in, would you then require the employees to park either, somewhere else, maybe still on site, but further away or whatever?
Yes. We would direct the employees to park further away on site. There is a mechanism, and this would come into play, and I was waiting to address this issue on the potential for this condition there. But if we wanted to try to put parking off-site, we actually have to come back before you. There is a procedure to do that. So we could accomplish that if need be. But if we do have a tenant that would require more parking, especially if they required more parking nearby where the entrances are, say it was some kind of physical therapist and they were dealing with people who had mobility issues, we would just move the tenant, we would indicate that the employees had to park farther away.
Thank you.
Just, if I could just briefly interject, this is, since the topic has come up, I spoke with Mr. Citron before the hearing, and generally speaking, I would recommend not having conditions of approval attached to a variation. The way that this is written does have a condition of approval. Because there is a clear procedure in the code, I would suggest striking the condition of approval that was in the draft motion if the commission is considering a motion later on. The condition as it is, I would recommend go ahead and remove that, as there is a procedure in the code for the property owner to work with the village on a formal shared parking agreement.
And there's a tenant or the parcel to the north of the building. That what you're talking
That would probably be the easiest, but they are not limited to that. They could enter into an agreement with another property owner if they wish to.
Was there an event that triggered you guys asking for a variation, or are you just preparing if you're going to change the use or some
Thank
new
you.
tenants come in?
We are basically prepared. There's really a couple. The event was our buying the property. We discovered this prior to our purchase. One issue we have is, God forbid, that there is an act that demolishes the building more than 50%. We would be required to rebuild it in conformance, either add the parking or building a smaller building.
Right.
And that causes us issues with our insurance company to deal with that. It's also a financing issue. If we go to refinance this property, that could become an issue there. And please don't take this the wrong way, but staff has been very accommodating and willing to work with us on this. But if someone takes Andrew's job, I'm being very serious about this. I'm not being facetious about this. If the next person in that chair isn't, again, as practical, we could be in a situation where we can't lease out a space, where we will have a space that won't be leased out, because truly, the parking, an existing tenant can remain there. Someone gave them a permit, the existing tenants can remain there. I can tell you, not arguably, but by law, they can remain there because they acted under color of law. If they move out and we have to start re-tenanting this building, someone else could say, no, you can't. You don't have enough parking. You have to have general office, and we'll be left with spaces in this building. So those are the things that have happened, but it's mainly for the future, not as it currently exists today.
Yeah, and I can see that based on the geometry of the site and the current building, that if you did have to rebuild the building and have the 136 spaces, you would lose 20 on each side, plus a little bit of the north. You would take a huge chunk out of the building.
Another, as I said, another reason for the hardship, that if we had to rebuild it, it wouldn't work. And again, this is all this company does. Your company basically is predicated on medical office buildings.
That's all they do.
And in fact, they just bought 3 buildings in Arlington Heights, or a couple?
There's 3 in Arlington Heights, 2 in Lake Cook, and then this one in Vernon Hills.
So this is what they do, and they really try to do them to a very high degree. And this building will show a lot better as we continue getting the revenue from the property.
I have a question. Do you know, are the parking spaces compliant for size, the existing ones?
That's an interesting question. We didn't look at that off of the survey. If we restripe it, if they're too small, we would end up losing parking spaces.
Right.
Which we're trying not to do. And again, if anything, they were compliant at the time the building was built, because we met the code at that point in time. I'm some way hedging a little bit because I don't know the answer to that question. I don't
Okay.
think Tom
Well,
knows it.
yeah, the reason why I ask is if you do have to make them or larger, then you're going to lose more than what you're asking.
Well, we don't have to make them larger because they exist as they are today.
But if
and
you
they were-
restripe, I'm wondering if you have to bring it into compliance.
So restriping in and of itself wouldn't require a permit, it wouldn't trigger us checking them just to freshen up what's already there. A full reconstruction would be another question, but we can scale it off. There are dimensions on here, we could probably figure it out.
It was a good question, and I wasn't really thinking about the fact that we're resurfacing it and therefore going to have to put new stripes. My position is the fact that they exist in the dimensions that they are today. If anything else, cars are actually smaller these days than they were, 30 years ago when this property, more than 30 years ago, when this property was built. But we'll look at that and we'll conform with whatever code requires.
Did you say what are you doing to the pavement? Just sealing and restriping?
Resurfacing, so we're not,
there's gonna
it's not a total reconstruction, but it would be, why don't you explain it?
It's a 2-inch mill and then overlay.
So you'll strip what's
Strip
there
the top 2
and relay it?
inches and then overlay with 2 inches.
Does that trigger anything?
That is a good question. I could check with our engineers and see what we typically require. If you give me a second, though, I can scale this off and see if it's actually an issue.
My question was, if you're doing that, there's that one handicap spot that's along Route 60 there. Is there any reason it couldn't be moved up on the building side of the parking lot?
Could you say that again, please? I'm sorry.
There's one handicap spot that's right along Route 60 in the center of your site, it looks like.
Okay.
To move that up so it's on the building side of the parking lot versus the
other
60
side?
Route 60 side for
We could,
handicap access.
I'm sure we could do that.
The Illinois Accessibility Code allows you to share, I'm going to call it properly improperly, that refuge area that you have, the 2 spots, and you can actually share it. So you can put, if you have an existing handicap space with the refuge area, you can put another handicap space on the other side of it. So we would be able to accomplish, Commissioner Heidner, what you're suggesting.
Okay.
And that is a proper condition for part of a variation on parking. So we're okay with that. And that does make sense.
You probably have the same issue in the back of a lot, except that I noticed you have one tenant that's kind of off to the far west that doesn't really have a handicap access, so that's probably why it's there.
It could be, yeah. To be honest with you, I haven't looked at where the handicaps are located that thoroughly.
Well, if you shared some of these spots, you could gain a couple spaces too.
Some of the handicaps with the,
Yeah, you'd gain, if you got rid of the one along Route 60 and combined it with the one just to the
Yeah.
north, you'd gain a space.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Well, but they'd lose one on the
But
north side.
you don't count the hatched as a parking space, so they wouldn't have to hatch that anymore.
We actually gain one if we can share that refuge area, the hash part of it. We're taking away a handicap space that is a space and a hatched area or refuge area, and we're moving that handicap space next to another hatched area that's already serving that purpose. So we actually would gain one space. Thank you.
Well, I'm not sure you can do that, given the way it's constructed.
We'll
I mean,
see.
the way it's,
We will look at
Yeah,
it.
if there's enough room
It's going to
and-
take more than us
Yeah.
sitting here. We'll work with Andrew on that.
Right, you also have to be aware of where the existing curb cuts are in for the handicap.
Yes.
So we don't want to move handicap spaces if they're already aligned with the
well, that
ramping.
one's just crossed.
No, but there's curbs and everything, so we.
I know, but
otherwise they're
it's right next, here's the handicap spot right here, and the other one's over here.
Yeah.
So the cut would be there, where that handicap spot is. Any other further questions from the commission? Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there any comment from the public?
This is the way I like my hearings.
Being there is no public rush to the podium, we assume that we can close the public portion of the hearing.
I guess we can sit down. Thank you.
Does staff have anything to add?
I'm just going to
The staff comments, as noted in the staff report, we have contacted the property owner regarding some general property maintenance issues. They've indicated, as was mentioned here earlier, that they do plan on addressing those items. In the event that they don't, we can, of course, work with them from a code enforcement standpoint, but it sounds like they're absolutely willing and planning to take care of those items. Beyond that, just the procedural note, the public hearing notice was placed in the newspaper within the required time frame. Public hearing notice letters went out to the property owners within 250 feet. And a public hearing sign was placed on the property as well, more than 15 days prior to this hearing. We did not receive any written comments prior to the hearing. Other than that, we did discuss striking the condition of approval in the draft motion. Was there thus far a desire to add a condition of approval in any other verbiage?
No.
Okay, with that, I had nothing additional to add.
Okay, and they have submitted their responses to the standards for variation, and the first item is the property in question cannot yield a reasonable return if permitted to be used only under conditions allowed by the regulations in that zone. And is everybody satisfied with the conditions that the petitioner has presented?
Yes.
Okay, the second one is the plight of the owner is due to unique circumstances. Everybody concurred with the petitioners met that one? The variation, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the locality. I think we can agree that that's true. Okay, so therefore, all the conditions have been met. We have a standing motion to approve. And we've made the findings of fact and recommend approval of the following variation to Appendix C, that the property at 830 West End Court is required by Section 21.5, as described in the application, received in February 21st and is illustrated on the site plan. And that the parking requirements for the permitted and special use be reduced from the required 136 spaces to 106 stalls. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll call the roll.
We have a motion made by Chairman Pro Tem Heidner and seconded by Commissioner Cotton. Commissioner Mulcrone,
Yes.
Commissioner Leese,
Yes.
Commissioner Navett,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Cotton,
Yes.
and Chairman Pro Tem Heidner.
Yes. Okay,
We thank the commission for their time and consideration of this. Andrew will discuss with you when this will go back before the board. Again, thank you very much. We look forward to improving the property that's been here for a long time in the town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good seeing you, Bernie.
Okay, the second case is 2023-03, a petition filed by the village requesting approval of amendment to Appendix C of the zoning code, in Chapter 20A, Regional Plan Unit Development, Section 20A-3 Procedures. And I'll let,
I will need
You
to swear
take-
myself in for this one.
do you so solemnly swear that the testimony you present today will be the whole truth?
I do. Andrew Jennings, on behalf of the Village of Vernon Hills. I am the Community Development Director. The village is requesting a zoning code text amendment to Article 20A, which is the Regional Plan Unit Development regulations within the zoning code, specifically the procedural rules in subsection 20A.3. The impetus of this particular action, was a request by one of the pods within Greg's Landing. There are several custom home pods within Greg's Landing that have architectural standards that are approved as part of their development permits. The Royal Birkdale pod was one of those custom home pods that had specific roof material requirements. They're required to have cedar shakes, slate, or clay tile roof material. There were owners within that area that had requested consideration for a new type of solar roof panel that has the appearance of slate tile. It has individual pieces that look like slate tiles. Due to the constraints of the development permit, we could not, the village, my department, could not issue a permit for that roof, and began working with Royal Birkdale on an amendment to their development permit. Through the course of that, we did take the proposed amendment to the village board. The committee of the whole had no particular objection to the amendment, but noted that there was no procedure within the zoning code if another development pod, another pod wanted to do something similar. So the direction was to work with Royal Birkdale, but then also simultaneously work on a general amendment to the zoning code to set this procedure that you've got in your staff report here, so that other pods could request amendments in the future. So the gist of this is that if there is an HOA for the pod, that is a pod-specific HOA, not the master association for Greg's Landing, but a pod-specific HOA where the development permit applies to that specific area, they could take a vote among the HOA and provide that the vote at an official meeting of the board, the HOA board, to request permission for us to process that amendment. It would go to the village board as an ordinance amending the development permit. The other option would be, if there is no active HOA, 2/3 of the residents could sign a petition specific to that amendment, and then we could process it in the same manner, take it to the village board. Lacking either of those two demonstrations of support, they could still make a petition to the village, but in that case, it would require a public hearing. We would send out public hearing notices similar to the notices that went out for the hearing tonight, And that way, all of the residents within that area would be notified of the requested amendment, and it could be approved that way as well. So that is the description of the procedure. I've given you the entire context of this section in an excerpt of the code with your packets. The new section would be subsection H, and it starts on page 4 of that excerpt. So if you want to look at it in the full context, that is where it is. And that is the extent of what I have prepared on this. The standards for a rezoning or a text amendment pertain mostly to property-specific amendments. So as this is not a property-specific amendment, it's amendment only to the text, and it's not even an amendment to a specific zoning district text. The standards really don't apply for the most part. So I've included the one that seemed most applicable, and that is what is in the staff report. The amendment in question is in the public interest and not solely in the interest of the applicant. Happy to answer any questions that you have.
Hey, Andrew, one question. On H3, the last portion there says 2/3 of the existing homes in said area. Does that said area refer specifically to the unit development, or is there like adjacent areas involved in that as well?
So in this case, it is the homes that are subject to that particular development permit. So if you had a pod, for example, in Greg's Landing, there may be 30 homes in it. Only 25 of those home sites may be built, so it would be 2/3 of that number, specific to the area where the development permit is enforced.
So this applies only to RPUDs?
Yes, the development permits tend to be from areas that have a regional plan unit development.
Do you know offhand if Hawthorne Club is a?
Not off the top of my head, no.
I was just curious because if it was, it'd be very difficult. I mean, there are different types of, there are smaller units within Hawthorne Club and larger units within Hawthorne Club. I didn't know if they would be considered the same area or different areas. And I don't know if you run into this anywhere else in RUPDs.
I haven't. It has primarily been a question in Greg's Landing so far.
My other question is, the HOA can approve things with a 50% vote, correct?
It depends on what they're approving. I think that they can make a request like this with a 50% vote, but if it was something that was part of their declaration, I believe they need 75% of the membership.
Because I was wondering why the inconsistency between HOA being able to approve it at 50%, but homeowners have to have
It's
2/3.
Yeah, I would say it's the demonstration of support. So if it's gone through a formal vote with the HOA, we would take that as an indication of support of those who are attending the meetings, interested, made aware. But if there is no HOA, there was no other mechanism to get that show of support for the amendment.
Are we looking at other parts of the procedure as well?
There was no other amendment proposed. If you have a question, I'd be.
Well, I
happy to
noticed
take that.
under part 2C, it says step 3. It's in there, it refers to his plans. It should probably be changed in this day and age to the plans.
Sure. I think we have a general verbiage construction statement at the beginning of the zoning code that explains that now. But all the different references throughout the code haven't been updated.
Okay, and under step 2, right below that, it says planning and zoning for a public meeting. Does that mean a public hearing? This is I mean, we can have a public meeting without having a public hearing.
Correct. Which section are you in?
Right where I was changing the his to thus, under number 2, procedure, it says that request for approval for preliminary plans shall be submitted to the village clerk who shall refer the same to the Planning and Zoning Commission for public meeting and report to the village board. It's on page 2 of 5.
I believe that any action related to a new regional plan unit development would require a public hearing, not just a public meeting.
Okay, could we have that changed as well?
What I would suggest on that, since I didn't publish, I don't think I published a related, sometimes I'll publish with, and related sections. I think it's a little bit,
Scope of what we
a little bit
published?
beyond the scope since I didn't include that sort of generic, but it's something, we do take a look at the code as a whole from time to time. It's something that we can add to the list.
Andrew, was this triggered when the Greg's Landing HOA disbanded their architectural review board and relinquished control to the village? Is that where this is coming from?
So the development permit, not all of the development permits have been explicitly amended to note that the architectural review is now the responsibility of the village. We did that change in Royal Birkdale's actually when the solar roof tile amendment was made. I did specifically add that because that is generally the case now, that the village is handling the architectural review, the village staff.
And is this only for, I just want to clarify, the custom home sites?
So this would be where there are architectural standards, there are development permit conditions that may be specific to landscaping. So if there's some development regulation that the homeowners in a particular area want to modify, whether it's landscaping, whether it's an architectural standard for the homes themselves, this would give a mechanism to, things change over time. So 50 years go by and the original development permit is no longer relevant, and they would like to make a change. So this gives an option
Okay,
within
so
the code for that type of change.
So it's only for, like you said, if they have certain specifications that you need to have, like a roof or like the cedar and the,
I mean, there could be deck standards, patio standards, anything that is a regulation that's spelled out in the development permit that's outside of the regular zoning code.
okay. One more thing.
Sure.
Normally, do residents in Greg's have to pull permit for solar panels?
So a resident in Greg's would have to pull a permit for a solar panel. And in any pod that has a restriction on the type of roof,
Got it,
they
okay.
would not be able to put a regular solar panel. And right now, Royal Birkdale, you could not add a regular solar panel. The
No.
amendment that they requested is specific to the tile style solar installation.
I got you, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what I was writing about there. Who determines if there's a conflict with the provision of the final RPUD?
So that's a good question. I would say me for the moment. The regional plan unit development might have a series of guidelines that just apply across the board, and then development permits inside it wouldn't be able to modify up, if that makes sense. They wouldn't be able, an individual pod wouldn't be able to change something that was in conflict with Greg's Landing, for example. So that was the purpose of that statement.
Does it need to be clarified that it would be your position that would do that?
I don't believe so. I mean, it would be at the issuance of a permit. You could always deny a permit that wasn't consistent with the regional PUD or the development permit. But the idea of that was that we wouldn't use this procedure to modify something that applied at a higher level.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, anybody from the public? Let it be noted that there was no comment from the public, and we'll close the public hearing portion. So the petitioner has responded to the standards for variation, and the question is the amendment in the public interest and not solely in the interest of the applicant? And does everyone agree that the response provided is sufficient?
Yes.
Okay. Anything further from staff on that issue?
No, thank you.
Okay. So we have the findings of fact. We found that the petition did meet the requirements. And so to amend Appendix C, zoning, Article 20A, Regional Plan Unit Development, Section 20A, procedure as required by Section 21-.7, as described in the application by the Village of Vernon Hills, illustrated in the zoning code excerpt draft for public hearing, April 12th, 2023. And the following paragraph will be inserted. Okay. We have a standing motion to approve that. Any second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and approval. Call the roll.
The standing motion is made by Chairman Pro Tem Heidner and a second by Commissioner Mulcrone. Commissioner Cotton,
Yes.
Commissioner Leese,
Yes.
Commissioner Nevitt,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulcrone,
Yes.
and Chairman Pro Tem Heidner.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the final item, which, I don't know, can we approve that?
I would actually say in this case, no. I would recommend to the commissioners who weren't on the commission, you can approve minutes if, provided that you've read them, but since they weren't on the commission and we only have 3 for those who were, I think it's the safer bet to just put this on the next agenda. We'll be
Okay.
back together in 2 weeks.
Right?
I'd rather do that and be cautious than be wrong.
Okay, we'll defer the approval of the minutes of December 14th, 2022, and developmental review.
I made myself a few notes. It's been a little while since we met, so I do have a few updates. First, from a construction standpoint, Bell Tire, which was in front of this commission, I would like to say December, broke ground this week. That is at 1810 North Milwaukee, adjacent to the Aldi. Perry's Steakhouse has also begun site work. That is 1050 North Milwaukee, near the intersection with Ring Road and east of the new Hawthorne Row building. The Domain, which is the apartment building, the mixed-use apartments at Hawthorne Row, it's not yet, they're planning on doing tours for prospective tenants. They have not yet started those tours, but we've been in close contact with them about setting those tours up. They have had several commitments to lease units sight unseen. The units that are leasing tend to be the corner units, the 3 bedrooms. So I just thought that was an interesting note that they haven't been able to get people in the building, but there are some units leased.
Did you say it's called the Domain?
Domain, yes.
With an E?
I believe so. Domain with an E. And if I had thought of it, I would have shown you a few pictures of it, but
I believe
maybe
the
next
sign
meeting.
is up.
At the next meeting, I'll
rental?
bring a
No,
couple
the
of pictures.
domain sign is,
Yes.
the blade sign's up.
Yeah, we did issue the temporary signage for that, and I'll at the next meeting I'll try to remember to bring a couple of pictures of the unit so I can give you a better update on that. 440 North Fairway is a office building that is just south of Glacier. The building's vacant. There is a prospective purchaser of that building who recently went to the committee of the whole to discuss a redevelopment. There would be a 2-unit spec industrial building on that site. The committee of the whole is generally in favor of it. They have not yet submitted for technical review, but it is something that you may see in the future. Similarly, 600 Hickory Hill went to the committee of the whole. This was a existing business within Vernon Hills looking to relocate from a rental unit into a building of their own. It is a parking lot that's not associated with any building, so they would be building a building on what's currently a parking lot. The business is Anton Parr. They fabricate and sell and service equipment that's used to test the density of dissolved carbon dioxide, so carbonation in soft drinks, beers, race car fuel, etc.
What development is that in?
It is on Hickory Hill. I'm trying to think of what it's Corporate Woods.
Okay.
I'm just trying to think of what else is near it to orient you, but it is on the north side of the street, detention pond next to a empty parking lot.
Okay.
899 North Milwaukee, which is in Melody Farm, was the former Fairgrounds Coffee. There's a new business moving in called Crisp and Green. This is a sort of a make your own salad. Well, not make your own, but you sort of like Chipotle, you can add to it. They are going to be in front of the committee of the whole next week for an outdoor dining area. The previous tenant did have an outdoor dining area, but they're doing a slightly smaller one directly north of the building. Also on this week's meeting, the Everly, we have a minor update to their grading plan. There's a grade difference between Lakeview Parkway and the cottage-style units that are along the road there. They weren't able to grade it without a landscape wall, so they're going to add a wall to it. It's a necessity at this point. There's no real way to make up the change in elevation. So I have the appearance of the wall to just provide the board the update on Tuesday night's meeting with what the solution is to deal with that grade difference.
Should our review process have caught that?
You know, I've gone through sort of the how did this happen on that, and I would have thought that it would have come up in technical review. It didn't. I don't know exactly why, but we're kind of left with the here's the condition in the field. We have to resolve it, and this we discussed several options with them, and this really was the best option, the cleanest. There was the discussion of possibly dropping the siding farther down the building.
Is that wall going to be right by the path there?
The wall is going to be by the buildings, so they'll make a landscape, a planted bed directly adjacent to the building. Then they'll have the wall. The grade will drop, and it'll be flatter from the wall to the bike path. And then the last update I had is we have our next meeting is on April 26th. There are 2 public hearing items that we published for that night. Both are at the 1000 Butterfield complex, so two new businesses in that office light industrial complex there on the east side of Butterfield Road. And that was all I had.
Why are they coming before us?
Good question. Both of them require a special use. So the OR&D district is a very short list of permitted uses. One of them is a retail type of establishment, which requires a special use in that district. And then the other one is a business that actually went in front of the committee of the whole about 2 months ago because they require a combination of a rezoning, a text amendment. They're a catering establishment, and the OR&D district, actually the zoning code in general is silent on catering, so a catering establishment is not on the short list of permitted or special uses in the OR&D district. So we've advised them that they do need to define catering and add it to the OR&D district. The committee of the whole did discuss it and had no objection to it, but they do need to go through the combination of a text amendment and special use request.
Oh, I just had a question. I don't know if you know this, if this is a different realm, but Hawthorne Melody, do they have,
Mike, huh?
nope. Hawthorne Melody, do they have like a non-compete for businesses clause there?
I don't know. There are non-compete clauses in some of the REAs around. I don't know off the top of my head, though.
Okay.
Dick's Sporting Goods, are they going to stay at that second location as well?
That is a good question. I have the temporary period where if they went past a certain point, they had to resurface the lot, has passed. It passed while there was a discussion of a sale of that property to an end user who's going to buy that building.
The whole building, or?
I don't know exactly how far they were going to go. So we paused the resurfacing discussion while there was a discussion of the sale of the property, but I haven't heard from them, so we do owe them a follow-up call.
It's nice to see all the trucks are gone.
It was an assist from the police department in helping us take care of that, and then the property owners themselves were very good about it.
Okay. Go ahead.
Are you about to adjourn?
No, yeah, I was.
Okay, I have an announcement. Tonight will be my last night on this commission. I just wanted to thank everyone, Jim and Jerry for the last 10 years for our lively banter, Andrew and former staff members. I wish Hal was here, I thank him for his leadership. Just say thanks to Village President Byrne for appointing me to this board. Had a lot of fun, kind of representing architecture for all these projects that have come in, and also thank the various village board members throughout the years who occasionally listen to some of my advice. So,
You can't leave, we have no architect then.
but it's been fun, and I thank everyone. It's been a great experience, and I wish the new commissioners a great success on this board, and good luck with it.
Well, on behalf of the village staff, I do want to say that I appreciate the service and the dedication. These are positions where you put in a lot of time, and I know you've put in a lot of time over the years, so I appreciate it. I've been here a short amount of time myself, but I know you've put in a lot of hours over these years to take this role seriously, so thank you.
No, thank you.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Any second?
Second.
Come on, it'd be good to done it.
And that we can do on a
We are
voice
adjourned.
vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
We are adjourned.